smart to fall for cults. It's really bizarre. You think that I'm a smart person, I can never fall for such hokum. And then someone sells you something, and it makes you double down because you've already spent your time and your money and you believe in him so much. You can't question it, because if you question it, you're questioning the last 8 years of your life. If you say, you know what, I don't think it existed. Basically, that is a complete insult to your soul. You've put so much into this hoax that when someone puts something forward, it actually is insulting to you as an individual because you've bought into this lie. Do I think this is going to change anyone's mind? I would hope so. The reason why I'm doing this segment is because to the people who aren't in a cult, I think it's important to see that these things can pop up anywhere. Absolutely anywhere. I just thought it was interesting because, again, it was a starter story. It was a story I was like, this will be a fun thing to talk about. And it exposed something dark and raw in a lot of people. It doesn't exist, guys. It flat out doesn't exist. And the sooner that you recognize it doesn't exist and move on and build your legacy, the happier you'll be. That being said, there is a television series starting about this treasure, so I think there'll just be more fanatics in the coming years. The next story we're going to talk about is fairly dark, so we'll try to keep it light as much as we can. So this is a story this takes place in Japan. So we're hopping in the Carpenter copter. We're leaving Forrest Finn's cult compound, and they're like shooting at us as we're flying away. We're like, get down! They're throwing fake gold at us as we're flying away from their compound. We're taking a trip to Japan. I've never been to Japan. I've only seen what it looks like on television. It looks pretty dope. My little brother's been there, though. He said the arcades are awesome. But anyway, so the Carpenter copter, we land in Japan. We have to, wipe the gold dust off of the rotors, because they did get us a couple times with their nuggets. And we're going to talk about Tsutomu Miyazaki. So Tsutomu Miyazaki was this young dude. Well, obviously, everyone, but I guess not women. But anyway, so he was this young guy. And when he was born, his hands were kind of fused into his wrist. So he had this physical deformity. And people made fun of him because he's growing up and his hands look all of him. And so he had a really hard time connecting with people. He lost himself into otaku culture. Now, otaku basically is low. It's funny because in America, otaku kind of has a different connotation. It's kind of like a nerd. Like you have a magazine called Otaku. But it's probably closer to the British term NEET. It's probably closer because NEET means not employed in education or training. So basically it's a loafer. It's basically a loafer. NEET. Otaku in Japan, it's the same thing. It's not like, oh, look at me, I'm a kawaii nerd. It's like you're a loser. You spend all your time reading comic books and watching cartoons, and you can do that stuff, but you also have to be a productive member of society. Over here, it's a little more, it has a better meaning, but over there, it's like you're a loser. So, Tsutomu, so we'll just call Miyazaki, I can say that easier. So Miyazaki was reading comic books, and then he had a bunch of anime, and he was watching horror movies. He was really into horror movies, particularly the Guinea Pig series, the Guinea Pig series is a gore-centered horror. It's basically just people being chopped up. Supposedly looks really, really realistic. So he was into that. He was into horror movies. He was reading manga. That was pretty much all he did. His father was fairly successful in the town and wanted him to take over the business, and Miyazaki was like, no, I don't want to do that. So people were giving him opportunities to move forward with his life. He was closest to his grandfather, and his grandfather died, and this is really the start of when all this breaks down. And this story takes place in the 80s. His grandfather dies, and it was the only person that he ever felt really close to. And so Miyazaki, when no one was looking, ate some of his ashes. Yeah, we're going there. And then he started to have other behavioral problems. At one point, he was caught spying on his sister taking a shower. And when she confronted him, he attacked her. And then the mom came and started yelling at him, and he attacked her too. So the guy's obviously a little mentally unbalanced. Least of all, attacking the women, taking the showers and all that stuff. Most of all, eating the ashes. What happens is, between August 1988 and June of 1989, this kid, this physically deformed kid, who had it rough growing up and was in a society where work was highly valued and he just wanted to sit around and read comic books and watch horror movies, something sparks in him and he decides to go, okay, I can either get a job, sit around and read comic books and just keep doing what I'm doing, or start murdering people. So over the course of a year, he murders 4 little girls between the ages of 4 and 7 and commits acts like necrophilia and cannibalism and trophies. He takes their feet home. He starts sending letters to the family of the girls. One of them said, Mari, cremated bones, investigate proof. So the guy's a real dick. And eventually, he is caught trying to pick up his 5th victim. The dad finds him doing stuff with this girl and basically chases him down and then calls the cops. He gets arrested. He's completely emotionless, surprise, surprise, in trial. His father kills himself out of shame of the whole affair, and he's eventually hung by the government. And there was a bit of a controversy because when they were taking photos of his apartment for evidence, they had rows and rows and rows of these manga, and some of it was mainstream, but some of it was more controversial stuff. And then his horror movies, and people said that the government was trying to make otaku culture look bad, and that stuff was inserted by the crime scene people, which is an insane conspiracy theory. I don't think they have like buckets of, they're like, hey dude, go get those Lum comic books, we're gonna stick them in this guy's shelves, they'll make him look like a lunatic. No, he had it, and he was dubbed the Otaku Killer, or the Little Girl Killer was another nickname of his. That's an overview. I don't like to dwell, especially in crimes against children. I don't want to be like, oh, and then he crept into the back seat and with a leering look in his eye. That's not this kind of podcast. Like, again, there are certain stories where I think that stuff is important, but I don't think it's important to this story. I'll talk about that when I'm talking about like Bigfoot getting shot by Patterson Gimlin. But again, I don't think that's important to this particular story. I think what's important to this story is 2 things. 1, it is very easy to go from being an outsider to slipping out of reality. It's very, very easy. I almost feel like our brain tricks us into that. What happens is you start off by removing yourself little by little from human interactions with people for good or bad reasons. There may be reasons why you're like, you know what, I don't want to hang out in my house anymore. My parents are abusive. My sister is doing this, whatever. So it's not always a bad thing to kind of step out. But what happens is people will start to step out too far. And then let's say that you're having trouble at your home life and then you start hanging out with homeless kids, which I've had a lot of interactions with, and that was their new family. So even though they had stepped out of the bounds of quote-unquote normal society, they now had a new family with new rules and new senses of loyalty and new things to do and to follow and to entertain them. But the thing is that you will sometimes also move out of that social bubble and you keep moving. So you're basically, you encapsulate yourself in, you are your own social network. And it's when that loneliness takes over is when you start to feel like you can do anything. That's when reality truly breaks for you, because you have no social ties whatsoever. You don't want to have social ties with mainstream society, that's fine. You can find social ties in other places. We're a social species, and we should be bound to each other in one way or the other. I think the internet is a double-edged sword. I think it can make people find social groups they didn't know that were out there, and that's really good. And I think it can isolate people even more, because they go on the internet and they see all these people who they presume are having better lives than them, and it makes them feel like even more of an outsider. I think the internet is great for building social networks, and I think that's a great tool for it. And here's a fun fact about me. I'm actually more shy online than I am in real life. In real life, I will walk up to a total stranger and start a conversation. All the time. Online, I lurk. Actually more shy online than I am in real life. And I think it's because when I'm talking to someone in real life, I can look at them and I can read them, and I can tell how engaged they are in the conversation. and whether or not they want to keep talking to me, or whether or not they're lying to me, or whatever thing. I'm really good at reading body language. Online, that's all gone. I'm very, very shy online. But I think for most people, it's the reverse. So a key component, especially for you, or if you're seeing people stepping out of cutting those social bonds to an extreme degree, that's where we have trouble like this. This guy, and people tried helping him, and he kept pulling himself further and further away from that social group that is important to us as apes, as social animals. So I would hope that if you find yourself doing that, there is a social group out there for you. Hopefully your social group isn't budding serial killers. That would be an actual, probably bad social group. But if you find yourself cutting the ties to society, your best bet is to go, instead of saying, I don't like my home life, or I don't like the church, or I don't like politics, or this political party, or whatever, instead of saying I'm going to throw it all away, say I'm going to find another group that I think I'll fit better with. That's really your best bet. And if you can't, then try to find a group online. My second thing that I want to talk about, and I'm going to have to dedicate a whole segment to this, of why I just don't like serial killers to begin with, but I'm going to address it very shortly here. I don't like serial killers because they attack the weakest of the weak. They are not hunters of men. They are not the dark side of humanity. They're limp-dicked punks who kill women, who kill elderly people, and who kill children. They're not killing UFC fighters or Marines. They're not chasing down, bodybuilders and boxing them. No. Ted Bundy is tricking young, naive, good-hearted women to come to a cabin with him. Ooh, oh my God. Call up a movie producer. We have to make a movie about that. That is the darkest side of humanity. No, you can't get it up. Limp dick wasn't just the turn of phrase. You literally can't get a hard on unless you're killing somebody. And they're always somebody weaker than you, who reminded you of your mom or your ex-girlfriend. Yeah, I'm really impressed by you guys. Absolutely. It's ridiculous. Now I'm probably getting an email from a serial killer, but they'll say, well, I kill Marines. And okay, I'm sure there is one serial killer out there who has killed a bunch of Marines, but I would be shocked. And then I was talking about this with Veronica, and she said, well, what about Jeffrey Dahmer? He killed men. And I go, yeah, he killed very skinny men. He killed young men. One of his victims was 16 years old. So and he had to drug them. He brought them over to their house because they wanted to have sex, and then he drugged them, and they fell asleep, and he chopped them up, or drilled a hole in their brain, actually. But so again, you're not going toe to toe with these guys. That's why I said, and I go, I'll give, you have hitmen, and you have gangbangers, and you have stuff like that, and they may be in essence a serial killer because they're killing multiple people. But a hitman's not like, hey, I only have one rule. I only kill women and children. You're like, no. They're like, my rule is, I'm going to take down that target. You have the gangbanger and be like, that guy owes us money and he's not paying up? Okay. He may go, I'll go kill his wife and stuff like that, but that's not their modus operandi. One day they may be out like shooting some chick who witnessed a crime, and the next day they're having a running gun battle with a rival gang. So that the mentality is different. I'm not saying all killers are like that, but the idea of the serial killer itself, victims are always women, the victims are always kids, the victims are always elderly people, and then the times that you do have male victims, it tends to be like Herb Baumeister. He would bring guys over to his house to have sex with, and he'd be like, hey, let's play this game where I put this rope around your neck and you pass out and it's really hot. And then people would be like, yeah, sure. So he's not like fighting them. There's no struggle. He just tricks them. Same thing with that idiot clown guy, John Wayne Gacy. And he was killing boys. So again, there's no UFC slaughterer. There's no New York police detective, strangler. Because the serial killers would get their ass stomped in every single fight with someone who could put up a reasonable fight. A 90-pound woman that Ted Bundy is tricking into his car is not a threat to Ted Bundy. King Kong Bundy is a threat to Ted Bundy. And that's why they pick the victims they do. And that's why I would say, non-existent respect for a serial killer. I think they're lame. So that was my rant for the day. I'm going to do this last story really quick because I want to end on a light note again. And I have to admit, after the last two stories, I need a light note. The story I read about it was oddly sexual to me. I found it very intriguing, and it's quite simple, but very, very hot. Maybe I was just in a weird mood. Nah, I do think it's hot. This is from an article entitled